The life of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte, born Napoleon Bonaparte, was born to Carlo Bonaparte and Maria Letizia on the 15th of August, 1769. Prior to his birth, the island of Corsica, of which he lived on, was part of the Republic of Genoa. However, after the island declared its independence, Genoa sold the island to France, right before Napoleon was born. Napoleon was one of 7 children that the Bonaparte family had. Napoleon was a stark Corsican nationalist, believing that the island should gain its independence. This caused tensions within the family, as Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, became the monarchy's representative for Corsica in 1777. Although Napoleon's relationship with his father was not well, his relationship with his mother was quite well, as his mother was a disciplinarian, and Napoleon respected that. At the age of only 9, Napoleon would move to mainland France, where he would enroll in a military academy with a scholarship. Most Corsicans didn't know how to speak French, as they only knew how to speak Corsican and Italian. Napoleon became fluent in French at the age of 10, although he was bullied by his peers due to his strong Corsican accent and short stature. When his studies at the academy were finished in 1784, he transferred to the École Militaire in Paris, where he hoped to become an artillery officer. However, due to his father's premature death, he was forced to take a 2-year course in only 1 year. Upon his graduation in 1785, Napoleon would be given the rank of second lieutenant. Following the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789, Napoleon would spend the first few years of the revolution in Corsica fighting a strange 3-way battle between royalists, revolutionaries, and Corsican nationalists. Napoleon came to fight against the Corsican nationalists and began supporting the French Revolution's ideas and became an avid supporter of the Jacobins. His time fighting in Corsica would be one of the last times that he styled himself as Napoleon Bonaparte, as, following his fight in Corsica, he began giving himself a more French name, Napoleon Bonaparte. Following the abolishment of the monarchy in France, other European countries, wanting to keep stability by reinstalling the monarchy, would declare war on France, starting the First War of the Coalition. In 1793, Napoleon would move back to the French mainland. He would then begin fighting to defend the revolution. He would be sent to put down a British-sponsored counter-revolution during the Siege of Toulon, and would be promoted to brigadier general. He would then put down an uprising in Paris, and would get promoted to major general. As he did more and more things to protect the revolution, he would even be given his own army, known as the Army of the Interior. Around this time, Napoleon would even marry a woman named Josephine de Beauharnais. In 1796, the revolutionaries would plan to take Austria out of the War of the First Coalition by doing a 3-way attack on Vienna. Napoleon was stationed in the south near the Italian peninsula, where he was meant to be sort of a diversion, where the more powerful northern armies were meant to be the ones who attacked Vienna. Napoleon was outnumbered by the Sardinian and Austrian armies. However, he was able to knock the Sardinians out of the war by splitting the Austrian and Sardinian armies. He would then chase the Austrians to the Battle of Lodi, where he would triumph against them. He would chase the remaining Austrian forces back to Vienna, where he would force the Austrians to sue for peace, knocking both Sardinia and Austria out of the war, all by himself. The unpopular revolutionary government of France was worried that Napoleon, who was growing in popularity quickly, would grow power-hungry ideas and may stage a coup, so they sent him to Egypt. Napoleon attempted to set up a colony in Egypt to try and undermine British access to their colonies in India. Although Napoleon was partially successful in being able to set up French influence within the area, he was forced to flee in 1799. While Napoleon was in Egypt, the European powers took the chance to declare war on France once again, starting the Second War of the Coalition. When Napoleon returned to France, the country was not losing the war. However, the stability of the country was questionable. Not wishing to see his country lose the war, Napoleon, along with Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, would stage a coup d'etat on the French government. This coup would be successful, and Napoleon would install the consulate and would become the first consul practically ruling the country as its monarch. Following this, Napoleon would take control of the Army of the Reserve and would cross the Austrian Alps to reach the siege of Genoa. The French would triumph over the Austrians at the Battle of Marengo, and then the Austrian capital of Vienna would be exposed, and so the Austrians would once again sue for peace. Following this, the War of the Second Coalition, just like the first, would end in a French victory. However, following the war, France was economically shattered, but Napoleon was able to fix it. Following the French Revolution, the new government had gotten rid of the Catholic Church. However, Napoleon, realizing that many French people still identified as Catholic, would bring it back, and not only that, but he would allow for freedom of religion, even for Jews, which was especially rare at that time. Following multiple assassination attempts on him, Napoleon would realize that he wished for his legacy to live beyond him, and so he decided that first consul for life was not good enough, and instead decided on becoming Emperor of France. He would hold a vote, and the results would come in with a completely rigged 99% yes for him becoming the Emperor of France. Napoleon would invite the Pope to his crowning ceremony. However, unlike many European emperors, the Pope did not get to crown Napoleon, and instead Napoleon crowned himself, something almost unheard of for European emperors. Following this, the British would declare war on France, as both sides had been violating the peace treaty. Napoleon, following selling the Louisiana Territory to the United States, would begin planning for an invasion of Britain. Britain would begin offering money to anybody who wished to join the war on the side of Britain, and so some countries would take up this offer, including Naples, Austria, Sweden, and Russia. This would begin the War of the Third Coalition. Within only a matter of weeks, Napoleon's army would be able to meet up with Austrian General Mack and would encircle the entire army before capturing the entire army at the Battle of Ulm. Napoleon would later state, "I have defeated the Austrian army by simply marching." He would then turn to face the Russian army, which was rapidly approaching. However, before he could reach them, they would begin retreating. Although this seemed good, this was not good for Napoleon, as the longer the war dragged on, other countries like Prussia were more likely to join in on the side of the coalition. To stop this, Napoleon sent messages to the Russian army to make it seem like he was vulnerable, and so the Russian and Austrian armies came to face him at the Battle of Austerlitz. There, Napoleon won a tremendous victory over both the Austrian and Russian forces. After the Battle of Austerlitz, the Austrians were forced to surrender and sued for peace, while, following the conquest of Naples in 1806, the war came to an end as a French victory. The Austrians were dealt with severely this time, as much of their land was taken away, they were forced to pay severe compensation, and they were forced to promise never to declare war on Napoleon again. Following the war, Napoleon would set up the Confederation of the Rhine in Germany. Seeing his influence within the German states dwindle, Austrian Emperor and Holy Roman Emperor Francis would dissolve the Holy Roman Empire, an entity that had existed for over 1,000 years up to that point. Napoleon wished for peace within Europe, however that seemed unlikely, as the Prussian king, Frederick, was under pressure from his wife to declare war on Napoleon, and eventually he would cave in, and would start the Fourth War of the Coalition. This war, however, would end as quickly as it started, as the Prussians were not the best militarily, and were quickly defeated. Following the Battle of Friedland, the War of the Fourth Coalition would come to an end, with Napoleon basically becoming the master of Europe. By then, almost all the major European powers had made peace with Napoleon or had become his ally, and so the only major threat left to France was the British. To try and defeat them, Napoleon attempted to destroy their economy by introducing the continental system, blocking any attempts of British trade to mainland Europe. Many European countries disliked this, as most of their economy was built on trading with the British. Due to this system, some of Napoleon's allies, such as Spain, began disobeying the system and began trading with the British. Because of this, Napoleon would invade Spain and would give his brother, Joseph, the title of King of Spain. However, the Spanish people disliked their monarchy being overthrown by an opposing one, and so they revolted. The British, around this time, would begin sending money to Austria in an attempt to bribe them to invade France. This would end up working, and the Austrians would end up invading France, breaking their treaty from back in the Third Coalition War. This would begin the War of the Fifth Coalition, which wouldn't even last 4 months, as Napoleon quickly defeated the Austrians. In the peace deal, Austria would lose even more land, and Napoleon would marry Emperor Francis's daughter. Napoleon seemed invincible. He dominated Europe, and almost nobody could oppose him. However, he made one great mistake when Russia defied the continental system. Napoleon, feeling betrayed, would gather 650,000 troops, an enormous number of troops for the time, to invade Russia. Just as they had during the War of the Third Coalition, the Russians' plan was to retreat, wearing down Napoleon's troops over time. As Napoleon went deeper and deeper into Russian territory, the scorching hot Russian summers devastated his army, killing hundreds of thousands. As Napoleon approached Moscow, Napoleon believed that the Russians wouldn't give up such a historic site as the city, and he was correct. The following Battle of Borodino was the single bloodiest day of the entire Napoleonic Wars. Although the French won in the end, the battle was bloody for both sides. As the French troops entered Moscow, the retreating Russian troops ordered the city to be burned to the ground, and so it was, as the city was set ablaze. The French waited within Moscow, waiting for a Russian attack. However, this attack never came, and as winter set in, the beginning of the end for Napoleon came. The French army retreated throughout Russia. However, along the way they were attacked by Russian troops, berating them along the way, killing hundreds of thousands more. Hearing of plots to overthrow him within Paris, Napoleon deserted his army and fled for Paris. His army attempted to escape Russia while being berated along the way. It's estimated that 600,000 troops entered Russia, while less than 100,000 left. Seeing that Napoleon was in a horrible situation, countries such as Sweden, Prussia, and even Austria declared war on him, beginning the War of the Sixth Coalition. Napoleon attempted to fight all of them. However, he was unable to, and as all nations converged at Leipzig, Napoleon met all of them at the Battle of Leipzig, otherwise known as the Battle of the Nations. Although the French fought ferociously, they were defeated by the coalition and had to escape via the only bridge in the town. The French were going to blow up the bridge so that the coalition could not follow them. However, the bridge was blown up prematurely, stranding 30,000 French troops. As more and more nations that were previously allied with Napoleon joined the coalition, Napoleon didn't see the writing on the walls and continued to fight, while France had already been surrounded. Napoleon fought hard. However, his efforts were not enough, as eventually the coalition made it to Paris, ending the War of the Sixth Coalition with a coalition victory. In the peace deal, Napoleon was exiled to the tiny Italian island of Elba, being deemed the Emperor of Elba. When he learned of what his fate was to be, he attempted to commit suicide by drinking poison. However, the poison had gone out of date, and instead, he did not die. Napoleon stayed on Elba for quite a while, improving the island tremendously. However, he was dissatisfied with his new life, and so he would eventually return to France in one last attempt to regain power. When the new monarch of France, King Louis, got word of this news, he sent troops to arrest Napoleon. However, the troops defected to his side, and so King Louis fled to Belgium. Hearing of this news, the major powers of Europe declared war on France once again, this time in the War of the Seventh Coalition, which would be the final war of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon would attempt to quickly take out the British by defeating them at Waterloo. However, the Prussians would arrive and would quickly defeat Napoleon, bringing an end to the war quickly. This time, Napoleon was not spared of being able to stay within Europe. This time, instead, he was banished to the small African island of St. Helena. This time, Napoleon had almost no chance of escape. During his time on St. Helena, he was quite lonely, his only company being British guards sent to stop him from escaping this time. During his time on St. Helena, he would write books, including one about Julius Caesar, one of his inspirations. In the February of 1821, Napoleon's health began to deteriorate rapidly. On May 5th, 1821, Napoleon spoke his last words. L'armée, tête d'armée, Josephine. In conclusion, Napoleon Bonaparte's story is one of perseverance and one of triumph. It is a tale of a man from humble origins who rose to power to become the most powerful man on the planet. Napoleon Bonaparte is undoubtedly one of, if not the, greatest military general in all of human history. Thank you for watching this video on the life of Napoleon Bonaparte.